Hello and welcome to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. I'm Swebb.
And I'm Dad.
And we are the dad and daughter duo talking about all of our favorite sports moments from the week. Dad, what is up?
Not much, Swebb. Not much.
Not much. I feel like you have a lot to talk about. It's been 2 weeks since we recorded an episode. I think that there's a little bit more than not much.
I do have a lot to talk about.
Well,
I have a lot of stories to tell you. Met a lot of nice people.
okay, let's start the episode without you tapping on the table.
Oh, okay.
Because
Sorry.
some people do actually only listen to the audio and they don't want to hear you tapping on the table.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, so where have you been? Tell us everything.
Well, um, 2 weeks ago, Wednesday, flew out to Honolulu, Hawaii. Saw North Carolina play on the Friday night at the University of Hawaii. A win. Then the next morning, flew over to Maui, Hawaii. And on Wednesday and Thursday, saw them play. Wednesday against Dayton University of Ohio. And then on Thursday, they lost to Auburn University, who I think is the best team in the country this year. And then they made the consolation game on the Friday, and we had a 7 p.m. flight. So I couldn't watch that. I watched it on my phone from the airport.
So you fulfilled a lifelong dream, which was to see UNC basketball play in the Maui Classic in person. You've been talking about this for many years. For those who are unaware or not too familiar with college basketball, this tournament happens every year at Thanksgiving. So Dad has been talking about this for years. How long would you say you've been talking about this, Dad?
20 years.
And we know you like to yap. So that's a long time.
I found a lot of people to yap with along the way.
Oh, I'm sure. And so I've always, I think one year we went to the Bahamas for Thanksgiving and I was so upset that we weren't going to Grandma and Grandpa's. So I was always anti, like, we need to be home for Thanksgiving. We need to be having a home cooked meal, the turkey, all the fixings. But you managed to make it all work, Dad.
And I got back to South Carolina on Thanksgiving Day, about 2 o'clock. And we did not have a home cooked meal. We went out to eat, and it was horrible.
We went to a restaurant. This is what you get for deciding that you wanted to go to Hawaii for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but you were sitting in the house for like 2 days. You could have cooked 10 turkeys.
First of all, the food wasn't horrible. It just wasn't what you were used to. So because you traveled with Mom, me cooking the meal wasn't going to be what you were used to either.
Haven't you learned all these years how to cook a turkey?
Yeah, I've learned some things, but you're pretty particular about what your expectations are for Thanksgiving.
Hey, okay, whatever.
So tell us about the trip. You go to Hawaii. Where did you stay? Did you stay at the same place as any of the teams? Or you stayed in a different hotel?
In Maui, we did not stay in the same place as the team. All the hotels were like right next door to each other.
Okay.
So the Carolina team was in the Westin, right around the corner from us. Then there was the Hyatt right next door to us. And then we stayed at a Marriott. And then there was a Sheraton right around the corner next door to the Westin.
And how many teams play in the tournament? Was it 8 teams?
Eight teams. Carolina and University of Colorado stayed in the Westin. So we went over there a few times. I got some pictures. I asked, they were walking through the lobby. Your mother wanted to go to a luau, so I had to throw her a bone for sitting through all those games.
It's the least you could do.
So we went to the luau, and that was in the Westin. So when that was over, the Carolina team was walking through the lobby. I asked them to take a picture, and of course they did. And I will tell you this. One day we were at a restaurant in the Hyatt on the Saturday night, and they had 2 rows of tables set up, and I said, oh, I bet you a team's going to be coming in here. Lo and behold, the UConn team came in, sat down, and I will tell you, walking through these hotels, and you see a lot of the players with their parents walking together, and these kids are the most respectful, courteous kids. Yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you. How you doing? I've never seen so many kids that young. Most of them aren't from New York, Swebb. They're from all over the country. And they're so respectful, so nice.
Okay.
It
Well,
was
that's great.
really,
I'm happy. I'm happy that the players are polite, respectful. They're college players, probably with a bunch of NIL deals. I'm glad to hear that they have their heads on their shoulders. Now, there were some big schools there. There was UConn, UNC, obviously, Michigan State, Auburn, as you mentioned. There were some heavy hitters in the world of college basketball.
it was probably, the people in the tournament said it was probably the best tournament field they ever had, the toughest field. There were good teams there. UConn, national champion the last 2 years, lost all 3 games.
And you mentioned UNC ends up going 2-2 in Hawaii, 1-2 in the tournament.
1-2 in the tournament. They finished in fourth place in the tournament. They're going to have a little problem. They have a size problem. They don't have enough height.
We've been talking about that since the start of the season. Now, what was the game atmosphere like? Because what you've mentioned is that it's almost like a high school gym.
Okay, at the University of Hawaii, which they played on Friday night, they have a nice arena, 10,000 seats. It was packed. They don't usually get that kind of crowd, but because North Carolina was in town, they got a packed place, loud crowd. North Carolina beat them like by 18. They're not a great team. Okay, in Maui, it's like a big high school gym, about 3,000 seats. They don't even have room for bathrooms and concession stands in the building. The bathrooms are in porta potties outside, and the concession stands are under tents outside. You can get away with that because the weather's
Can you
75, 80
though? A
degrees.
porta potty? The concessions being in tents, under tents outside, fine. But a porta potty? I don't know.
Well, for a man, it's okay.
Yeah. Stop hitting the table.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's just how it is. It's and the gym is real tight. You're right on top of the action. We were in the second row behind the bench, behind the one of the baskets, and believe it or not, those were general admission seats. I don't even
Now
want to tell you
let's
how
take a
much they
look
cost.
at a video of you um, walking, getting some screen time. You're famous now.
I know that limp anywhere. There he is.
Okay, so video of you walking along the sidelines.
I was coming back from the porta potty.
See, this is
I
this is
rushed
one way to
out there
not
during.
spend it.
I rushed out there during a timeout, and I figured let me rush out there and come back in, and I had to wait for a second or two, so they'd already started the action. And your wise guy brother, watching the game on TV, starts making comments from the
Well,
peanut
you're not
section.
fleet of foot, so I don't know where you thought you were rushing to during a timeout.
Well, listen, I walked about 2 miles a day on that trip because everywhere we had to walk to, you had to walk here, you had to walk to the parking lot to get the car, you had to walk back here, you had to walk here. It was crazy.
2 miles a day is nothing.
For me, it's a lot.
Yeah, we could change that. You start walking a little bit
No,
more.
no, no, no. We're not
Each trip
changing
you
it.
go on will be a little bit easier.
My knees still haven't recovered from that trip.
It's only a matter of time. You just keep walking, and it gets easier and easier. I ran 4 miles this morning, and it was 28 degrees out.
What are you getting ready for the Olympics in
I'm
Los
trying to stay in
Angeles?
shape. Trying to lose that Thanksgiving weight that I put on over the weekend.
You didn't eat that
for
much.
multiple.
That
Well,
was,
then Mom made a Thanksgiving dinner on the Friday that we had Friday and Saturday, so
now that
I
was
had
good.
that.
That
Came
was
back
good.
home on Sunday. I had pizza because I didn't feel like going grocery shopping. And then now it's December. We're into Christmas parties and all types of things. Like it's not going to be easy. So I am focused on staying as healthy as possible. You should try it.
Okay.
Okay, so Miami is number 20 in the country now. They're 4-3. Their next game is on Wednesday against Alabama.
Oh, Miami basketball?
I mean, UNC is number 20 in the country, and they're 4-3. Their next game is against Alabama.
That's going to be a tall task. They don't match up. Last year, they didn't match up good with Alabama. The last 2 years, they didn't match up good with Alabama. Now they got to face them again. At least it's at home. We'll see what happens. Maybe the crowd can spur them on.
And as you mentioned,
Alabama
they're
lost
undersized.
the other night to Oregon, I believe. I saw the end of that game.
As you mentioned, UNC is undersized, so that's going to be a tough matchup for them. Obviously, it was tough during the NCAA tournament last year, but they're certainly playing a tough schedule. I feel like once they get to ACC play, uh, they should be pretty good. They good to go. They're getting a lot of challenges. They're still working out some things here with only 7 games thus far, but playing some very tough competition.
That they are. It doesn't get much. They played the best 2 teams in the country so far. Kansas on the road, they lost by 3. Auburn on a neutral court, they lost by 8 or 10, something like that.
So my Miami Hurricanes not doing as well. They're 3-4 on the season. They've lost 4 straight to some rinky-dink teams, or should be rinky-dink teams. They'll play this upcoming week. They'll play against Tennessee next week at MSG. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I want to go to the game.
Why don't you go to the game, Swebb?
Because it costs money to go to the game, and Miami's been disappointing me all weekend.
Go to the game. How much are the tickets?
I haven't even looked. You know why? Because I'm still recovering from the last game of Miami's that I was looking at, which was a college football bowl game that I thought that Miami would potentially be playing in, or an ACC championship game. And guess what? They lost on Saturday at Syracuse, 42-38. They were winning like 21-7 in the first half. They end up giving it 28 points in the second half. You just can't win football games if you're giving up 42 points. Like, that's a lot, and that's been their problem all season is the defense. But Miami had to win this game to get to the ACC championship. Obviously, they end up losing, so now Clemson and SMU will play in the ACC championship. Would have loved for Miami to have one more week, one to win the ACC championship and be one of the top 4 seeds in college football in the college football playoffs. Now they're on the outside looking in and hoping that something happens and they end up in those top 12 spots, which doesn't look likely, ranked number 14.
That would be a shame. Well, they don't do the rankings, the selections until Tuesday evening.
Sure, right? But here's the thing: if Clemson beats SMU, then they become the ACC seed. SMU only has 1 loss on the season, so they likely would get in over Miami. The SEC and Big Ten, it's tough to say how many teams will come out of there, but they're usually favored over some of the smaller or other conferences. I wouldn't say smaller schools, but other conferences.
They got Boise State as number 4 seed last week. Boise State, Boise, Idaho. They have a tremendous running back. I'd love to see the Jets get that guy.
Well, let's talk the weekend for you, because Michigan ends up winning the game against Ohio State 4 years in a row of beating Ohio State in college football. They win 13-10.
Let me tell you, I took a flight home from South Carolina at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning. Had to get up at like 3 o'clock. No, excuse me, 2:30.
Well, you were kind of awake.
And took a flight home so I could see the 12 noon game. And let me tell you, and I wasn't expecting much because they haven't had a good season. They haven't had a good offense. The quarterback situation's been horrendous. And Ohio State has had a great season. And Michigan has beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. So you figure the law of averages, and it's a Ohio State home game with 100,000 people going crazy, looking for blood after what Michigan has done to them to the last 3 years. And guess what? Michigan winds up beating them 13-10. But Michigan has a defense, and
The offense was terrible.
The
Davis
offense is,
Warren, the quarterback for Michigan, goes 9 of 16, 62 passing yards, 2 interceptions on the game. So, you don't typically think you're going to beat one of the top, what were they, like 5 or 6 teams in the country. And they were
Michigan
5-5
ran the
at the
ball
time.
well. They ran the ball well, and they played great defense, and they made big defensive plays when they had to. And you come away with a win. And I didn't even put on my Michigan shirt for the game. I didn't even put the helmet. I didn't even touch the helmet before. I did not. I was home and well at the time, and I said, you know what? Let me just sit here and watch this game.
To be fair, I'd been telling you that they were going to lose this season because it looked like that was in the cards for them.
You wrote them off weeks ago. Now they're 7-5. They're going to go to a halfway decent bowl game. And
7-5, you're not going to a halfway decent bowl game. 7-5, you're going to you're going to a bowl game.
Where were you? What do you think they'll go?
When you're 9-2, 9-3, you're going to a halfway decent bowl. You're going to a decent bowl game. When you're 7-5, you're going to a bowl game.
Yeah, but there's some nice bowl games in Florida. The Citrus Bowl. I forget the name of the other bowl that they play at the Tampa Stadium where the Tampa Buccaneers play.
Exactly.
Those are on New Year's Day. That's what I said. A halfway decent game.
They're not going to a bowl game on New Year's Day with 7 wins.
You know why? Because a lot of this is business, and they travel big time.
So they're gonna.
Some of these other schools don't bring a lot of people. A lot of this is about money too.
They're gonna win the bias of being a Big Ten school with a huge fan base, but 7-5 doesn't get you into it shouldn't get you into a New Year's Day bowl game.
With them, they might. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll find out next week.
All right. Well, congratulations to you. Miami's going to be going to a halfway decent bowl game,
They should go to a real good bowl game.
They'll go to a good bowl game. That's not what I wanted. A few weeks ago, we were thinking ACC championship for the first time ever, and college football playoffs.
Yeah, well, you haven't played any defense all year. You just happen to have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in college football.
Right.
And the guy is incredible. Then you have some real good wide receivers.
We've been playing with fire the whole season.
Yes,
there
you
were
have.
A few games that
Yes,
where we won by the skin of our teeth, and guess what? The party's over. We woke up from the dream.
It's not necessarily over. Let's see what happens this weekend.
I don't feel good about it being number 14. But, all right. So I'll keep you posted as to whether I decide to go to the Miami basketball game at the Garden. Maybe I'll get a last-minute cheap ticket, but
they're not going to have a sellout. There'll be plenty of tickets.
Well, obviously.
Who else is playing on that card?
They're playing Tennessee, and I forget, it's the Jimmy V Classic, so it's a doubleheader, which we went to last year because UNC played in it. Right. I can't remember who else is in it.
Unless it's Duke or somebody like that, they're not going to have.
It's not Duke.
They're not. They're going to be plenty of tickets.
All right. Well, we'll see. Okay, so let's talk the Knicks.
Let's go.
The Knicks, their offense is on fire. They won on Sunday night against the New Orleans Pelicans, and they came out right out of the gate, hitting shots and putting a beat down on the Pelicans. So the Knicks this past week, they went 3-1 in their 4 games. They start off this home stretch that they have here, this home stand with a win. They have 3 more games the rest of this week. But the Knicks are, man, when they're firing on all cylinders, it is fun to watch.
They have maybe the best offensive team in the league. They fire on most cylinders, most games. Their defense is getting better, slowly but surely. Brunson is playing a better floor game, passing, not just shooting and scoring a lot of points and spreading the ball around. He's playing more of a point guard role.
So you mentioned Jalen
And they're
Brunson.
still missing two of their big men.
Right.
One of them, Ochoa, is going to be
Achua.
back. Ochoa is going to be back in the next day or game or two. And Robinson is maybe a few weeks away. When they get those two guys, now they're going to have a lot more size and a lot more flexibility. We could be looking at something very special. Boston
you mentioned
is
Jalen
good.
Brunson.
Yep.
He wins the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. He went in 4 games. He averaged 26.8 points per game, 9.8 assists per game, and shot 54.7% from the field.
Yep. And you know what you can thank? You can thank our head coach. It's a lot to put all these pieces together, and he's done a tremendous job, as usual.
You know what's funny? You weren't a believer of this trade, and now you're out here thanking the head coach. And two weeks ago, you said you loved Cat.
Okay, I told you why I love Towns. I told you why. I said because he had a tremendous game, missed a few free throws. They lost the game by a point. And after the game, he's out there practicing the free throws. I told you I have a tremendous respect for people that work that hard, regardless of whether they passed or failed. And he was out there, and I said I'd never say anything about his slow feet and stuff. And there you go.
Well,
and now we've gone through, what is it, a month and a half of the season? A month of the season? A month and a half. So now we're getting closer to some of these other fellas coming back from injury. Now everything's rounding into shape.
The Knicks are 12-8 on the season, number 4 in the East. Over their last 10 games, they've gone 7-3. You mentioned their offensive prowess. They're number 2 in the league in field goal percentage, right behind Cleveland, who's 18-3 on the season, shooting 49.7% from the field, 39.3% from the three-point line, which is also number 2 behind Cleveland.
Incredible.
Number 1 in the league in free throw percentage, shooting 83% from the free throw line. Number 7 in the league in points, averaging 117.8 points per game. And number 9 in assists, averaging 27.8 assists. So, yes, offensively, they're an incredible team. And you're seeing Jalen Brunson knows how to get his points now, but his assists are way up this year because of the fact that they're really spreading the ball out. Guys are hitting shots. It's a lot of fun to watch. Now, you mentioned the defense. They're number 11 in the league in opposing points per game average at 111.5 points per game. They're number 22 in opposing three-point field goal percentage at 36.8%. And then number 17 in opposing field goal percentage, so 46.7%. So their defense could be better. Obviously, they started the first game of the season against the Celtics, who were, I think, hit 43s on the game. So that certainly skewed things. But they've been a lot better as a team. Let's just walk through some of the roster, because we mentioned Sunday they beat New Orleans 118-85, which meant that Tom Thibodeau was able to put in the bench. These guys at the end of the game played 9 minutes, which is I hadn't seen that in a while. So it's nice when the Knicks are blowing out teams because it allows for the starters to get some rest. But let's just talk about some of the key players for the Knicks. We talked about Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, we've talked about for weeks, averaging this past week, averaging 22 points per game, 3.8 assists per game, and 15 rebounds, shooting 52.5% from the field. I think he's also around 50% or so for the three-point line. Mikal Bridges had a big game earlier this week. He ends up scoring 18.3 points per game, 3.3 rebounds, and people have been a little hard on him. They've wanted to see more from Mikal Bridges, saying that the Knicks traded away a lot of picks for Bridges, who hadn't really been making an impact in games. And he comes back the next game and ends up scoring, I think, 31 points. So, he's starting to go in the right direction. OG Anunoby, 15.8 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, team high of 10.3 plus in your plus or minus rankings and
Yep.
ratings, and that is OG is known to be to always be a plus and be the league leaders in that category. Josh Hart doing what he does with 12 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and 4 assists. And then you had Miles McBride, who was back for 4 games, averaging 11 points off the bench. Cameron Payne averaging 7.8 points off the bench and 3 assists in the 4 games. And Jericho Sims also playing in all 4 games. Plays about 15 minutes, but gets 4.5 rebounds on average in that time.
The other night
So,
he had about 15 rebounds. The
right.
last game.
So, he's not scoring, but he's being a defensive presence, and he's also grabbing rebounds. So you mentioned guys like Precious Achua coming back. He's supposed to come back this week. Mitchell Robinson supposed to come back. I think we kind of give Mitch the time to get healthy, 100% healthy, because now the team is starting to round into form here.
Yes, they are. They're starting to round into form, and with the injured players coming back, they could be real good. They could be real good. Now, Boston is real good this year. Cleveland is real good this year. Oklahoma City is real good this year, but they're in the West, so we don't have to worry about them for a while.
Orlando is good, and Orlando is who they'll play on Tuesday night. Orlando is number 3 in the Eastern Conference. Then they'll play on Thursday. They'll play Charlotte, and Saturday they'll play Detroit. So, and then they hit the road next week. So, I'm curious to see the way that they play against Orlando, who has been tough, and they're a way better team than they were last year. They've always played the Knicks tough. So, yeah, they look good.
They look good, and just got to tighten up the defense because you know the bottom line. Offense is for show, defense is for the dough. If you want to win in the end, you've got to play defense. You've got to play tight defense because when in the playoffs are totally different from these regular season games where everything's kind of loosey-goosey, guys running around, shooting, scoring. In the playoffs, everything's half court, slow it down, grind it out, and unless you're built for that, you can lose.
You're right about that, and I think although Tibbs doesn't really like to play a huge rotation of guys, I think some of these injuries allow for guys like Jericho Sims to get some minutes, and hopefully gain confidence throughout the course of the season, so that when we start getting into that second half of the season, he can be a factor off the bench for the Knicks.
Yep, that could be.
And then you've got Deuce McBride and Campaign, who have been excellent
They've played
guards
great.
coming off the bench.
They've played great. They've played great. It takes a while. And people breaking Bridges' chops. He hasn't scored. They expect him to score 20-something points a game. Listen, there's only one basketball. Everybody can't score 20 points a game. And it takes a while for a new player to fit into the system and fit in with the other players. The other players know where he likes to get the ball and stuff. Even though he played with 2 of them in college, it's been a while. So it just takes some time.
Right. The Knicks are averaging almost 120 points per game.
Scoring
Jalen
is not
Brunson
their
and
problem.
Yes, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns are going to get their points, and there are going to be games where Bridges has a great game. There are going to be games where maybe OGO and Anunoby goes off. That's just the way it's going to be. There, to your point, there's one ball, so I don't think that he's going to be someone averaging 25 points per game. But if he averages around 18, 19 in an offense that's scoring around 120 points per game with 2 guys who are also averaging about 25, 26, we'll take it.
And play good defense. You do
Right.
that, we're in good shape.
Right.
And
The
don't turn
defense
the
is the
ball
most
over.
important thing.
Right.
So, I don't want to end on a negative note, but the Jets and the Giants continue to do what they do, which is lose. I texted you on Sunday because I made the decision to watch the Jets game when I got home
Good decision.
from the airport, and they were winning, and then they weren't, and then they lost, and I just so mad at myself because I could have been taking a nap during that time. And it's like I didn't even know what I wanted to happen because I'm like, okay, if they lose, they'll get a higher draft pick. But then obviously the fan in you, especially when they're winning the game, wants them to win. So I was just confused emotionally. watching the game. So the Jets are 3-9. The Giants are 2-10. There's two of the teams battling for being in the top few picks of the draft in 2025. And that's about all she wrote about
Well,
them.
this is what I've learned. When you're a Jet fan, season starts, you root for them to win. Usually, right sometime in October, it becomes obvious they're not going to make the playoffs. So the season starts the second weekend of September. By about the third weekend of October, it's not happening this year. So at that point, you got to put on the draft is in. We get players from the draft. The only way we're going to improve is we got to get better players. So the draft is at the end of April, and we're only 7 weeks into the NFL season, and we're horrible. So now you start rooting for them to lose, so you get higher draft position, and you might have a chance to pick the right guys, a better chance to pick the right guys, and might get you to where you want to be.
That's cute that you're giving them until week 7.
Their problem is a total organization problem. So now they fired their head coach. They fired their general manager. They got to bring in total new management team, which they haven't been able to get together in 15 years. That's the problem.
This is a total gut job. And,
no, you don't want to gut it because they have some talent. Remember, they're not getting blown out every week.
Well, I'm saying
every
organizationally.
Week they could have 3 more wins if they had a decent field goal kicker.
I'm saying organizationally. They have no GM. They have no coach, which makes it tough to figure out your strategy for the draft, right? It's also no free agents coming here. So you're in rebuild mode, and it's going to take a few years because each general manager and head coach that comes in is going to say, hey, these weren't my players. This wasn't my team. And It takes a few years for it to turn over. The problem with the Jets is that they do this every 3 to 4 years. I think it's like 2.5 to 3. So
that's the problem. Every time you fire a coach, the new coach comes in and brings his own assistant coaches in, and they have a whole new offensive philosophy, defense. So you're starting from scratch all the time. That's a problem.
It's funny, I sometimes wear my Jets sweatshirt. I said I wasn't going to wear it outside of the confines of my apartment. There was one weekend that the Jets had won the week before. I think they'd won on a Thursday or something, and I wore it to go run errands, and some guy said, "Go Jets." And I said, "Yes, this week I can wear this sweatshirt," and he laughed. But I say that to say I've been doing some Christmas shopping, and I thought about getting you and Roland, some team-inspired gear. And I didn't have it in my heart to get Jets gear for either of you because I didn't want to do that to you. So I didn't do that. So you will not be opening up a box at Christmas that has a Jets gear in it because it's just.
But you did.
I'm not going to set you up for failure.
You did get me something, did you?
Maybe. We'll see. We shall see. Now, won't we? All right. So, turning the page, what are you looking forward to this week, Dad?
Looking forward to the baseball winter meetings that start next Monday.
No word yet from Juan Soto, which does not bode well for us Yankee fans. So, we'll see what happens. But I do not have a good feeling about this because if he wanted to come back to the Yankees, he would have already let us know.
Judge put us through the same thing last year.
Well,
he didn't commit until in the middle of the baseball winter meetings.
Okay, we'll see. Wednesday night is going to be a big night though because there's a ton of college basketball. We mentioned UNC and Alabama, but all of the top teams are playing on Wednesday, so I'm looking forward to that on Wednesday. We obviously have been talking about Christmas and all things Christmas, so I'm going to squeeze in a few Christmas movies over these next couple of weeks as well, and some outings around New York to see the lights. I rode the bus today to work, and I got to see all the lights and the Christmas tree. It's not lit up yet. Lights up on Wednesday, but I got to see the window displays. I'm also looking forward to the start of the NCAA women's volleyball tournament, which starts on Thursday. So,
Who's in it? Who are the top teams?
well, there are 64 teams in it. Pittsburgh is the number one seed overall.
Pittsburgh?
Nebraska, Louisville, and Penn State are the other number one seeds.
Wow.
And
Pittsburgh is the number one seed in volleyball?
Pittsburgh has been the number one team in the country for a large portion of this year. They have an incredible opposite hitter who could potentially be and likely will be the national player of the year.
Wow.
So they have a few first team, I think will be named first team All-Americans on their team. Obviously, with the conference reshuffling, the ACC has been very challenging with teams like Stanford coming in, who's historically very good at women's college basketball or volleyball. Cal hasn't been as good, but yeah, I'm excited. The first weekend is usually some easy. Miami's in it, which is, I think, the first time in a few years that they've been in it. UNC is in it. So there are a bunch of schools this year that got in.
And Nebraska's a number one seed?
Nebraska's the number one seed. I like them the most. I think that they're a very well-rounded team. They obviously went to the championship last year, lost in the championship. Texas, not as good. They're the two-time defending champions. They're not as good. They just don't have enough lethal hitters. Their outside hitters are a little bit inconsistent. So and their middle blockers are young, so that makes them a little bit vulnerable. But anything could happen, which is they went on a run last year during the tournament.
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah.
And Nebraska, their first game of the year, they usually played in the football stadium, and they get 90,000 people, which is incredible. That's how serious the people in Nebraska take that volleyball team.
I'll tell you what, I'd love to go to a game.
90,000 people to a women's volleyball game.
Yep, I'd love to go to a match at one point in one of these cities, one of these college towns, because the atmosphere is incredible. A lot of the Big Ten schools garner some great attendance. SEC schools now, with Texas being, Kentucky is very good this year. Florida is a good team. So I'm looking forward to it. ACC, we mentioned Louisville, Pittsburgh are the two top teams in the league in that conference, as well as Stanford now. So yes, between my Christmas movies, between some college basketball, Knicks basketball, obviously, I'm going to be watching women's college volleyball.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So, do you want to leave us with a tip of the week?
Yes, Swebb. I'm kind of embarrassed. I lost all faith in the Michigan football team last week. I didn't even put on my Michigan shirt. I did take an early flight to get back to watch the game, but I didn't even put on my gear, and they won. So maybe that's what I got to do from now on. Maybe I was wearing too much stuff. That's why they were losing this year. So maybe I have to reverse it and go back to just wearing regular clothes.
Listen, when your quarterback only throws for about 70 yards, I don't think it was your apparel that has made the difference this year.
You don't think that was the problem?
I don't think that was the problem, but I love your standard stick with your team tip. We're on a bi-weekly basis with that tip. But yes, have faith, except for if you're a Jets fan and you decide around week 7 that it's time to turn the page to the draft.
Hey, you got to be realistic. Maybe they'll call me to be the general manager. Oh,
listen,
hold on
anything's better.
Hold on. Woody? Yes. I'll take the job. What's the salary? Oh, really? I'll take it. I just got hired. I'm the new Jets general manager.
Good. Start the clock. Make sure you work out a good severance package, because in about 2.5 years, you're going to be fired. Well, that concludes this week's episode of Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. Make sure to follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X. Subscribe on YouTube and Rumble, and share this episode with a friend. We will see you next week.
So look.
Thank you for tuning in to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports, the show where we cover all of our favorite sports moments from the past week. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble, and follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X. See you next week.